Story 1. Beneath the Bell Tides. The ocean doesn't forget, it waits. Marcel Vega had collected myths her entire adult life, from South American river spirits to Canadian lake phantoms. But the Oregon Bell tides haunted her dreams. The tides are said to ring like cathedral bells at moonrise, on nights when the sky held no clouds. Legend said the bells were a warning. She arrived in Drefton Bay and found locals tight-lipped gazes drifting when she mentioned the phenomenon. One elderly man whispered, "If the tide sings, don't let it hear you breathe." Marcel documented everything: sea patterns, wind currents, moon cycles. On her first night, she camped on the cliff with an audio gear. At 12:06 a.m. the tide rang, soft, melodic, almost scared, but the playback contained whispers, fractured symbols, some sounding reversed, one phrase repeated between the chimes. She's listening. The next morning, deep footprints, bare, distorted, led from the sea to her cabin door. She followed them to a hidden trail, down to a mangled rowboat etched with runes. Inside the hall, a wax-sealed journal. It spoke of Vemora, a woman of the tide, who saw through bone, who rewrote memory. One passage read, "Say her name, and the world will no longer recall you correctly." Marcel did. She spoke. Vemora. The air thickened. The ocean rose, not physically, but perpetually. Space felt warped. The moon's reflection blinked. From the surface Vemora emerged. She stood upright, skin silver like fog, limbs folding like ribbons. Her smile had too many meanings. Her eyes bled static. "You've heard me," the tide whispered through her. "Now truth dawns on you." Marcel woke, alone on the beach. But the town was strange. Her books were written by authors she didn't know. Her voice had an accent. Her license bore a different birth date. Friends ignored her calls. Her own mother said she had died at 15. Each night the tide chimed. Each time Marcel's world changed. New memories, vanished skills, altered history. She grew quieter. One day she walked into the tide. Now she sings. Tourists hear extra chimes. They grow nostalgic for places they'd never been. They dream of the silver woman with two white eyes. And sometimes, when recording the bells, the tide says your name and means it. Story 2. The Silence at Hollow Lake. Reflection is not always a mirror. Sometimes it's a warning. Dave Paddle thought he'd seen it all. Cryptid maps, whispered sightings, half-sane testimonies from trail watchers. But Hollow Lake intrigued him. The fog never lifted. Locals swore no birds flew above it. That compasses spun wildly. That dreams bled into reality. Dave camped beside the lake, with sonar and motion tracking gear. From his tent the water looked calm, but it reflected nothing. Not the sky, not his flashlight beam, not even his hand above the surface. His first sonar scan revealed shifting depths, structures moving slowly beneath. A spiral 80 feet wide clustered like vertebrae, something watching upward. That night the fog thickened. His tracker flashed. The movement detected on the surface. Figures stood where water should have swallowed them. No ripples, no wake. They stared, unmoving. He approached, but they vanished. The next morning Dave followed a faint path to the dock, half submerged. He stepped on it. The air hummed. The water rose. A head surfaced, pale, lipless, mouth slack. Its eyes were cavernous. "You brought memory," it said. "The lake remembers fear." Dave stumbled back, but the dog felt endless. Behind him, new figures stood, his childhood bullies, his lost father, a professor who once screamed at his thesis that it was unworthy, all dripping, half real. His recorder picked up glyphs he hadn't written. He blacked out. Days later, hikers found his gear. One camera showed Dave staring into the lake, whispering words in a language unknown to linguists. His research notes were undeniable, were unreadable, Symbols forming spirals, sketches of the moon twins above the lake. One line repeated in red ink, I live between reflections. Hollow Lake now reflects two moons. The stars above it bend sideways, and sometimes when the fog creeps inland, children describe a tall man made of water calling their names with no mouth. Story 3: The Last Descent of John Marks. Beneath the ground, things remember, and some things refuse to be buried. John Marks had inspected over 40 sites in his decade-long career. He knew the eerie silence of forgotten places, the hum of outdated machinery, the uneasy static that often accompanied histories no one wanted to revisit. But Whitlow Mine was different. Long closed after a collapse took 23 lives in 1962, it had remained sealed under legal disputes until a sudden green light gave John 36 hours to assess its viability. He was told the lower shafts were stable, but locals warned him of knocking sounds that weren't seismic. Armed with a scanner, climbing gear, and an old-style analog recorder, in case digital gets weird, the foreman said. John stepped into the mouth of the mine. Each level descended felt older than time. Walls bore claw-like scraps. Ceiling supports had bent in unnatural ways. On sublevel 2 he found equipment rusted in grotesque shapes, almost organic, like coral. And then voices. They drifted faintly from the rock, not whispers, full conversations from miners long dead. John's recorder picked them up. Names, birthdays, regrets. They faded when he moved. Sublevel 3 housed the anomaly. A steel door embedded into limestone, untouched by decay. No records mentioned it. He forced it open. Behind was a cavern, lined in pulsing veins of luminous. In the center, a towering structure made of cracked mirrors fused with stacked stalagmites. John saw himself in each shard. His childhood reflection, his teenage self, an elderly version he had never lived. Some mirrors showed him disfigured, monstrous, screaming. Then the radio screamed, "Do not look back." He turned. No one. When he faced the mirror again, his reflection turned on its own. The cavern shook. From the shadows emerged a figure in distorted mining gear. Helmet fused into its flesh, breathing like tectonic plates shifting. John ran. The tunnels betrayed him. He swore paths as he fled. Symbols began to appear on walls, spirals, eyes, open mouths. He descended deeper to escape. Each level looked older, wetter, hungrier. He found a chamber filled with artifacts. Miners' journals turned to stone, pickaxes embedded into the ceiling, and helmets in a perfect ring, each cardling an eyeball. His scanner buzzed. Entity detected. Memory corrupted. The mirrors returned. One showed him aging rapidly, skin cracking like porcelain, his eyes leaking into dust. Another showed a figure behind him, open mouth stretching toward John's spine. He screamed and disappeared. Search teams recovered recovered none of him, but his analog recorder surfaced days later outside the mine. It played a voice that wasn't his. John Marks is beneath. You brought him. You will forget this soon. Whitlow mine was sealed again, but every 27 days the dirt shifts, and beneath it someone breathes through your memories. Story 4. The Howling Below Windrest. In the quiet frost, sound travels differently. Some voices aren't carried by the wind. They're drawn from below. Cleo Navarro wasn't a thrill seeker. She was a reclusive sound engineer, known for mapping acoustic anomalies and remote places. After a strange call from an archivist in Windrest, Colorado, Cleo was pulled into the mystery. Townspeople reported hearing wolves in the dead of night, but no tracks were ever found, and no living wolf had been sighted in decades. More disturbing was what they said the wolves were howling. Words, phrases, names. Cleo arrived during a snowstorm, renting a cabin on the edge of the woods. Her gear was top tier: vibration sonars, parabolic mics, temperature probes. She began recording the first night. At precisely 3:04 a.m., her monitor spiked. A howl rose, not far, not distant, but inside her equipment. Slowed down, it became speech. You buried us too shallow. You buried us too shallow. She isolated the frequency. Beneath it, whispers surged, overlapping voices saying her own name. The town's history hinted at something buried. Windrest had once held a Cold War listening post. The building collapsed in the 70s during a silent avalanche, never excavated. But Cleo's map revealed inconsistencies in terrain upon open pockets and air chambers beneath the ice. She hiked to one of the anomalies during the daylight, found an old ventilation pipe, cracked, frosted over. Her mic picked up vibrations. When played back, the sound revealed breathing, labored, human. She sent a drone down the pipe. It descended over 50 feet and revealed a tunnel corridor lined with rusted machinery and rooms sealed with reinforced glass. In one, the drone captured footage of a figure, hunched, hairless, skin frostbitten marble. It screamed, but there was no sound. Back at the cabin, Cleo's recording began playing on their own. Names, memories, screams layered with static, and a new phrase: Windrest was not abandoned, it was devoured. She had contacted the archivist, but his line had been disconnected. His home boarded up, snow untouched for days. That night the wolves returned, not on the wind, but on the roof. She saw their silhouettes, tall, unnaturally straight, their legs bent wrong. Their mouths didn't open, but somehow they howled. One pressed his face against her window. It whispered, "You hear us now?" Join the echo. Cleo blacked out. She was found days later, wandering the tree line, eardrums ruptured, voice hoarse from screaming in languages no one could recognize. Her audio logs were confiscated, but a copy exists online. A spectral hum that shifts when you say her name. And every year on the coldest night in Windrest, someone disappears, leaving only a recording behind. Thank you for watching my video, and please subscribe.